Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to our Instagram Live. My name is Daniela. I'm a member here at Spoak, and I'm going to be hosting today's Spoak session with Lisa. Lisa will be joining any minute now, but I'm just going to give a quick rundown of the way that today's session is going to work. So this is an Ask Me Anything style format, which basically just means that you guys get to ask all of the questions that you'd like, and Lisa will answer them. So we already got a bunch of really good questions, most of them design related, some of them client related, business related, but there's also some fun stuff in there. So we will make sure to cover all those questions. And then if you have anything else you want to ask, please just put it in the box below and we will make sure we get them answered for you. So Lisa will be joining any minute now. You see that she's in here. Just give her a second to connect. And we'll get started shortly. Just 1 second. So many faces in here. Hi. Okay, let's see. Here she is. She's connecting now. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Oh, hi guys. We have so many fun members in here.
Hi, everyone.
Amazing.
Sorry, I'm
So,
just getting my computer set
no,
up.
you're good. I was just giving a quick rundown of the Ask Me Anything format, which basically just means that you get to answer all of the fun
Yes.
questions that our members have for you. Um, I didn't actually introduce you yet. I know that some people are familiar with you, some people might be new here, but I thought it'd be nice to just have you introduce yourself and explain how you got involved with Spoke, and yeah, then we have some fun icebreakers after that, so
Great.
we can dive into all the good stuff.
Um, of course. So I'm Lisa. I own and run my own interior design firm based in New York City. I have been involved with Spoke for about a year or so now, a little over a year. I was first introduced to Spoke via my friend and now colleague, and I honestly like all life things mentor, just the coolest person ever, Gila. And we were introduced back in our mid 20s through just like circles of people in New York City. And I think, uh, we were probably the best thing that came out of that situation. I've been doing design mentorship and advising with Spoke for about a year. From, obviously my background in interior design and the arts fields in general. And I've had the great fortune of being able to talk to so many members throughout this last year and really dive into all things interior design. Also, specifically speaking to the business standpoint of things.
Yeah. Well, we are so happy to have you. I feel
Yes,
like
this is gonna be fun.
yeah, this is going to be really exciting.
That's my puppy, by the way. So
Oh my
she might
gosh,
make,
I just kicked my dog out. My Austin's out with her because I was like, she's going to be a hoot
oh
in this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Here,
Great.
she's sorry. So everybody hears this puppy. It's Gaia. She's
Can
3
we
months
see
old.
her?
Do you want? I knew she'd make noise. I can't really move her crate, but I'll grab her. Do you want to see her now? Is that
I
weird?
actually, I mean, whatever. One of the icebreaker questions is related to animals, so I feel like this
Do
is
I
actually
have?
really fitting.
Here's Gaia.
Oh,
This is Gaia. Hi, Gaia. Everyone says hi.
this is the
Puppy
best way to
reveal.
start a spoke session.
This is Gaia, and she has her Dayglow green collar. Okay, so this is how we're going to start this AMA. She might have to sit in my lap so she doesn't make noises.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
If
but
you,
go
yeah, if you
shoot.
need to put her back somewhere, it's all good. But yes, so we have some icebreakers, which are always a fun time.
Great.
One of the icebreakers was if you prefer cats or dogs, and I'm gonna go ahead and guess dogs because you have this cutie next to you.
I'm very much an animal person though, but I don't own any cats. I own 2 dogs, so if that
Yeah,
gives you any indication.
yeah, that's it. I'm gonna say that's a strong dog answer.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna fire these questions off, but again, if anyone has, I mean, we got a bunch of really great design questions that we'll jump into after this, but if anyone has any other questions, just feel free to put them in the chat below, and I'm watching them. So yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. What was your first job?
I was, I think my first like official job was I worked at a camp. I was an art teacher's assistant, and we made, it was very arts and craftsy. We did a lot of things with like old denim.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I think I was like 13, maybe 12.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. That's like a really cool first job, I feel. Like my first job was not that cool at all.
Oh, you want to tell me?
My first job was working at a sub shop. I think it was called like Firehouse Subs. Um, yeah, I wasn't even the sandwich artist. I was just like the cashier girl.
Sandwich artist. I
Yeah,
love that.
I know. Just you got to keep it like fun, you know. Yeah. Anyways, yours feels very fitting for for what I know
It
about you.
it foreshadowed, I think, maybe the future,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that at the time.
Well,
Needless to
that's
say.
awesome.
What else do we got?
Okay, so we have what is your morning routine?
Well, it starts with two dogs, dog walking. And then I always do some sort of movement like Pilates or a long walk. I used to do a lot of running, but I kind of stopped running as much. And then I usually make a coffee or a matcha. I'm like very
Nice.
big on making very good matcha lattes these days. And then on, shower, change, and usually just get right to work. It's,
Yeah.
I really envy these people who have like serious, structured morning routines because mine is kind of like whatever the morning becomes, but I try to obviously have some sort of structure because of the dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, having a dog helps, I think. Just, I mean, I'm still not a morning person, but I feel like having a dog, it forces you to wake up and get out in the world and talk to people, and like you just have to be more active. So,
Exactly.
love dogs.
Exactly.
Okay, next question. What is your favorite restaurant in the city?
There's too many to count. I think probably for like fast, like my number one go-to, this restaurant called Desi Gali. It's an Indian restaurant
Uh-huh.
um, in Murray Hill. And I think it's like literally only takeout. Like I don't even think they offer you a bench to sit in. So like there's no option to eat there. But then I think other ones that I really love, like my splurge is like really good sushi. So
Yeah.
like bar masa or Nobu or something like that if I'm feeling really good.
Yeah.
Sugarfish and all these, and then like the local neighborhood sushi spots. And I also love Peter Luger's.
Wow, I actually haven't been there, but I everyone says amazing things, and it looks so epic
It's
when you drive
classic.
by. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, love that. All right, so I'll ask you a few of these, and then maybe we just dedive into the all the
The
fun
designy
design
questions.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, quick ones. Salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Morning or night person?
Morning.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Fully?
Yeah, 10:30, I'm like, let's go to bed. Yeah.
Wow. Beach or mountains?
Both.
I know
But if
that's
I
a hard
had but if
one.
I had to pick mountains,
Nice. Chocolate or vanilla?
vanilla, hardcore.
Same. Yeah. Okay, those are the quick ones. Oh wait, one more. Deep sea or outer space? I love this one.
I think definitely outer space because even though it kind of freaks me out when I think too much about outer space, I love Carl Sagan, so I
Yeah,
have to say outer space.
yeah, yeah. I feel like both are. Yeah, that's a
Deep sea
really
is like deep. Like,
very
there's a
deep,
there's a lot. It's vast.
very scary. Yeah,
Yeah.
freaks me out a bit. Okay, cool. Well, now that we're warmed up and we know all the things about your morning routine and where you would prefer to be, um, let's dive into some of these design questions. So we were pulling in some questions from our members, and we got questions from Instagram, and I'm sure more people will pop in with some stuff here. But
Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and ask you some of the ones that we have already.
Yes, please.
Okay, what's the best advice that you've ever received when you are just starting out as a designer?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Probably to be, oh, just to be true to yourself, and you know, I think it's really hard to do everything, you know, and I think to stay true to yourself and stay focused on what your end goal is, because I think there's a lot of like sirens and things that go off on your journey to becoming a designer, and you kind of want to soothe everything, but I think it's just about triaging the issues that come up, and what else? I think I was always told to like triage the issues and stay focused and stay true to yourself, because there's so much influence,
Yeah.
and you need to stay on track with what works for you and what you really want. And it's
Yeah.
okay to dabble. I think that was one thing that I was always told. Like, it's okay to dabble and try things, but when it doesn't work, like, that's okay. You can let that be.
Yeah. Do you feel like you remember a time when you were like starting out where, I don't know, you just kind of like a moment where like that advice came into play for you? I'm sure. I mean, I just feel like there's so many things
Probably
that
all
come
the
up.
time.
Yeah, like
All the
constantly,
time.
right?
I feel like in design, I mean, there's just so much stimulation, there's so much influence, there's so many things that like pop up and you want to engage with or you want to try to execute. And it's hard, it can be hard to stay on course, um, because so many things are so interesting. But I
Hmm.
think, yeah, I think every project that I work on, there's things that come up where I want to divert, I want to try something new, and that's not always the best time to do it.
Hmm.
So I think I'm constantly challenged in that sense, but having a strong sense of, the aesthetic that I love, and the vibe that I want people to feel when they come into a space is, ultimately the compass in making, I think, smart design decisions for my projects. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously everybody and every project is different.
Yeah. I feel like yeah, I mean, we talked about that before, like staying true to yourself and also like, I don't know, I just think like because there are so many things that you can get into and there's so many distractions and things that come up. I don't know, it
Yeah.
makes me wonder like, this actually could be like a segue into the next question, but it's like, was there a time where you like kind of went off path and um I don't know, I guess going off path wouldn't necessarily mean like a failing point, but was there a moment where you feel like you learned a big lesson in your design career, and how did you, I don't know, how did you kind of deal with that? I feel like that's a loaded
Um,
question.
yeah, there's a lot of different angles I could take on this one. Sheesh. I would say, I mean, one thing that really surprised me when I started out as an entrepreneur, interior designer of my own firm, was just how many hats you wear.
Hmm.
Um, and I had an idea that I'd be doing a lot, but I did not have an idea of just how much. And initially you kind of wear every hat. You are the accountant, you are HR, you are the business, developer, you are the designer, you are the administrative. So that was definitely one of the bigger challenges, I think, of my entire career in design in general, because there's all of these areas, all of these components are so essential to every business, let alone a design business where you're procuring things, and there's so much paperwork and invoicing and budgets. It's, and to stay organized and to keep all your other ducks in a row. That
So
was
much.
initially super, super, super challenging,
Yeah.
which is probably why I'm always on a soapbox with, all of our, all these spoke sessions and, school and whatnot, about just preaching about how important it is to mind the administrative work and the non-creative work of design, because when that like foundation and bedrock is of the project, the business, whatever it is strong, you can carve out the time to really be creative and find like the emotional level of it more rewarding, because you're not so, you're not like a duck treading water thinking, okay, I have to design all of this, but I also have to do all of this, back end work that
All the other
may,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
What are like,
that was challenging.
yeah, I feel like you obviously work in this world and I'm like dabbling on the side in it. So for someone who might not know, what are the administrative the tasks that you were mentioning?
Oh man.
Oh, did it just chop out?
Did it? Can you hear me?
I hear you now, yeah, but I think I might have just like lost internet for a sec, of course. Okay, we're good. What was the last thing that you heard me say?
The administrative things that just
Yeah, like what are the things that like because when I before I got into design stuff, I was kind of thinking like it all just sounds glamorous, right? Like it
yes.
all just looks so I mean it is, it's really cool and it's so fun, but what are the things that are I can think of them, but what are like some of the less sexy administrative things that you need to
Things to
do?
do.
Yeah.
Um, Proposals and contracts, invoices,
Yeah.
budgets, um, purchase orders, vendor invoices, receipt summaries. I mean, specification writing, the list goes on. Basically,
Yeah.
anything you could possibly do in Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word is what you have to do. Like, think
Yeah.
of anything. That is it.
It's all
Um,
in there.
there's a lot in there. Yeah. And then, I mean, if you want to layer in, the more internet-based things like your website and your social media and all of that,
Yeah.
that becomes a lot.
It's so much to balance. Well,
Yes.
well, you are a wizard and
Honestly, I try. I have an amazing team. Let's just put it that way.
yeah.
Initially, I think I was a wizard. Now I've become a very good team member of wizards,
Yeah.
amongst wizards of
Yeah.
my design team.
It definitely helps to have the
Absolutely.
team. Okay, so we just got a couple questions in.
Yes.
One of them, I think this is a great question because I feel like Spoke can come into play here. But where do you recommend starting a design career if you have no formal education?
Another topic that I love. Definitely just education. And when I say education, I don't mean going to get a very expensive design degree. I don't think that that's absolutely necessary. I think it depends on the individual. But my suggestion would be if you want to, switch gears and you don't have any design experience and this is something that you really want to do, educate yourself. Read a lot of design blogs, read design magazines, and get obviously become a member of Spoke, play around quite literally. See what it is about design that attracts you to it, and is it just putting together really beautiful palettes, or is it fabrics, is it furniture, is it lighting, is it the combination of all of these things? I think it's very important to consider all elements of design because it isn't always just amazing creative times. And I think understanding that within the interior design practice, whether you own your own business or you're working for somebody else, it's not all creative work all the time. So, diving into what it means to be an interior designer and really understanding the ins and outs is, I think, first and foremost, very, very important. And then, of course, no, somebody wrote in here,
I
bespoke
know,
school. Yes,
I know. It's like
absolutely.
bespoke school.
I think that that's a great place to start. Um, I do say so myself, but I I think just like any hobby or anything that you feel really interested in, it's always best to, inform yourself and then make an educated decision on what comes next. And if you want, more professional experience, I think that, obviously going on job fair on Spoke is amazing. I mean, I post jobs there somewhat frequently at this point, and I'm
Yeah,
amazed with the people who apply who honestly don't have that much professional experience, but then in the application standpoint, I mean, it's learning no matter what. And I love seeing people want to try and want to learn and want to learn from experience, because that too also can inform somebody whether or not this is the right career choice or diversion from what they're currently doing. um,
yeah,
because you get to have that hands-on experience. And
Yeah, and just
That
like playing around, right? Like it's
absolutely. I
yeah.
mean, I remember I had an internship. I think I was in college and I had a summer internship at a residential interior design firm. And I remember going home, I worked, I don't know, 4 or 5 days a week. And I remember going home every night and being like, I do not want to own my own firm. I do not want to own my own firm. This is craziness. I like working for a firm. I don't want to own my own firm. And then fast forward, 12 years. No, maybe not 12
Yeah, I'm
years.
like, how long? How long has it been?
I'm not that old. Maybe yeah, a couple years, and then the tides change, and the reason I bring this example up is because I think it's the experience, the hands-on experience that
Mhm.
affords you the opportunity to make decisions and decide what's best for you and what's best for how you see the next couple years of your life rolling out.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think just like even being a member of Spoke and having the different, there's like the job fair, which for those of you who don't know the job fair, I mean, what it sounds like. It's a place where there are jobs posted, but there are jobs in the design field, and there's also just jobs like, branding, like things like that, and getting to play around, at least for me in
Oh,
Bespoke
totally.
School and also in Viz, like you just kind of get to learn what you're comfortable with and what you like and what you don't like and what you might not be as good at. And yeah, it's all about just like playing around, figuring it
I
out.
completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And quite literally playing, like
Yeah.
seeing what you like and what you don't like. Because even if you like the world of interior design, but you don't want to actually design someone's home or a restaurant,
Hmm.
there's so many facets of interior design that you could go into. There's fabric design, there's fabric houses that you could work for, there's furniture design and lighting design and vendors that represent all of these things. There's so much materiality. There's stone vendors and tile vendors, and there's just so many different
Yeah.
outlets.
I didn't,
Um,
that's actually crazy when you break it down like that. Like there obviously are all these different worlds. Like to me, I'm
yeah,
just like, oh, I'm gonna I'm gonna design homes or something, but then you can dive into every single piece of material and
yes,
work for those specific kind of companies, right? Like,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Or you start your own fabric line. I mean, there's so
yeah,
many pieces to the interior design puzzle that it doesn't always have to, the buck doesn't have to stop with I want to be an interior designer, and if I'm not an interior designer then I'm not in the industry and I'm not being creative. And that's just, I think that's just not true. I mean, I
hmm,
deal with so many different facets of the business just in the day to day that I can see the breadth of just possibilities.
yeah. Do you prefer doing residential or commercial projects?
Depends on the day.
But like,
I don't
I
have a solid
it's so
answer. I probably would say commercial most days. But then you get an amazing residential project and it, makes all the residential dreams come true. So I
yeah.
don't have a solidified answer to that.
And do you feel like residential and commercial design, it's like two completely different like complete different fields design wise or
There's a lot of overlap.
hmm
But I do think typically in commercial design, you as a designer, you get more autonomy than you do with residential design.
yeah.
And not always, this is not a one size fits all response, but typically with commercial design, you get more autonomy. And with residential design, you're a little bit more intricately involved with your client because, of course, it's their personal home,
Hmm.
it's their personal money. It's quite simply more personal.
Yeah, someone just asked what the biggest difference between residential and commercial design was. Do you think that's it, like the
Um,
level of
the biggest difference, I would say, it depends on the scale of these projects, because sometimes a small commercial project could also be treated like a residential project in the sense that there's only there's certain boxes to be checked.
hmm
But I would say that the biggest difference is the volume of people for commercial projects that need to be considered versus a private residential project. I think private residential is very acutely specific to the client, whereas commercial even if the design intent is specific for your client, the use of the space is typically for so many more people. So you have
Yeah.
very different, types of customers or clientele or staff that are going to be experiencing that space. So the way that you have to think about the design of a commercial space is just broader.
Hmm.
Just thinking about like accessibility and all different types of accessibility, and making sure that any person with any specific need can
Yeah.
also feel comfortable in these spaces. Whereas for a residential client, they might have a very clear outline of how they want accessibility to work within their home. So I think it's just the audience to which you are ultimately designing for would be, I think, for me, the biggest difference. And I don't think that there's a, a pro or a con to that. I think it's just a different thinking gap.
Hmm. Yeah. You're obviously right. It's designing for multiple people instead of just like one person or a couple of people who live in a home.
Exactly. You're just thinking about more possibilities.
Yeah.
How does this space function if, somebody who is visually impaired comes in the space, or hearing impaired versus, a private residential home where the specific demographics of the residents. So you are catering to them specifically as opposed to a broad audience that may or may not use the space. So it's a little bit more ambiguous, but I wouldn't say it's challenging. It's actually just more thoughtful in a different,
Hmm.
it's just like I said, it's just a different thinking cap.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to ask you because I feel like most of the members that I've spoken to at least are designing for like their friends or people who are just reaching out to them like through word of mouth. I guess with like the friends specifically, like how do you deal with designing for friends? I don't know. I at the beginning at least felt super uncomfortable because I'm just like, money. Like I don't know. Like I want to do this, but it feels weird asking. But you know, you get out of that. But anyways, how do you deal with that, or how did you deal with that when you were starting out?
We get this question a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and I may be a broken record on my answer to this, but it is treat them like a client. They are a
Yeah,
client.
I
They are
know.
a client. And that may, force a little bit of like soul searching for yourself on how do I articulate myself and communicate effectively to make sure that the boundaries are clear. But once you establish the boundaries and you treat them like a client and you give them that invoice for the amount that you agreed to, it kind of forces the narrative of this is a professional relationship inside of or outside of our personal relationship.
Yeah.
Um, yes, of course, that gets a little bit funky when it's like, your best friend or your friend's mom or something like that. But my advice is to just, this is where one size fits all. If you're doing work for somebody, you need to be compensated for your time,
Yeah.
and they are your client, period.
Yeah.
Um, However you get to that conversation, like I said, it could be challenging, but so important to treat them with the respect that you also should be treated with as it relates to, a financial transaction and designing their personal space.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
And
they're
I
a
also
client,
I think
period.
about like when you work with someone, anyone, like whatever client you get, that person is always going to at least like tell one more right? You always get a job through a job, I feel like, or you make a connection through another
Yeah.
connection. So I just
Word of
try and
mouth is huge in this
yeah.
industry.
Yeah, and I try and think about that too because it's like you kind of want to keep everyone on the same level in some way. But I mean, I feel like I'm still dealing with this, like it's tricky when you're working with friends for whatever reason it feels, a bit different. But
Well, I
um,
mean, for example, I mean, I work with Gila with Spoke, and
right.
Gila and I are also, out within Spoke, and probably more so outside of Spoke, we're friends. So, I think it's about creating professional boundaries
Hmm.
and establishing what the common goals are and how are we going to reach these common goals. And because it's not within the friendship, it's, I think reasonable minds understand that when work is done, compensation is due. And maybe that's the way to ease the blow. Maybe it's not always like, you know, X amount of dollars. Maybe it's bartering, or maybe, you can, figure out, okay, I'm going to do this and you're going to take me out to dinner, or,
Hmm.
something of that, to that effect, but in some way you should be compensated for your time. I actually have this 15-minute rule where if something is going to take me more than 15 minutes, and they're not, and whoever it is not a client, or even if it's a prospective client,
Hmm.
I will give anybody 15 minutes of my time. Um, Beyond 15 minutes, if they keep pushing, I think then it becomes a bigger conversation. So
Hmm.
maybe that might be a good rule of thumb for somebody who's challenged by this
Yeah.
topic. Because I mean, I say this now with such confidence, but it wasn't always this way. I did struggle with the same, how do I manage, and how do I, read the room, and how do I figure out what this person really wants from me? How do I ask them to pay me for my time?
Right.
Um, but ultimately, once I finally applied that 15-minute rule and everybody's a client, I ended up feeling, not concerned or resentful about the work that I was
Yeah.
doing.
That's good. That's actually great advice. Like just thinking about a system that works for you. And I feel like that works really well for you. That's awesome.
Exactly. Thank you.
We got a couple of more questions in here. Sarah's asking if you're working for yourself and continue to gain experience and want to raise your rates, how do you communicate that well, especially within a circle of people who may have known your past rates? That's a
Awesome
really good
question.
question. Yeah.
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 And that also not always the easiest. But like most things, over time, rates increase with experience. I mean, it's the same if you are working at a firm, or you are working in, any pretty much any job for an extended period of time. You're gaining more experience. You have your toolbox to pull on is larger. Typically, I mean, your compensation also increases. So I think there's two parts to this question. How do you communicate?
Hmm.
That's where you have to hit it on the head right away. I think it's about establishing that before a new portion of your project starts. So if you're in an existing project and there's a rate established, I would say finish out that project at that rate. And if additional work comes to you from the same person, that's when you can have that conversation of, I would love to work with you again. Thank you so much for this opportunity. FYI, since we last engaged on this together, my rates have increased,
Hmm.
and this is my rate. And again, this is really hard to not have to justify or defend your new rate. I think you leave it pretty straightforward. This is my new rate,
Hmm.
and please let me know if you would still like to proceed with a proposal or whatnot. And if they come back and ask for why is your rate changing, why can't we maintain the same rate, then you could just very fairly say, I have more business now. I am, working on growing my business, and the way that I can grow my business is by, you know, having my experience also be um, valued in my rate. And typically, no one's really gonna push after you give them that answer. And if they do, you probably don't want to work for them, because that means that you're there valuing yourself and your time and your experience, and they're saying, no, we want a discount. So,
Yeah.
I actually see in here right now, there's a good friend of mine in this industry, and he always told me, if you're going to discount your rates, you also have to take scope out. So,
Hmm.
you can't give somebody a proposal for X amount of dollars and they want a discount. If they want a discount, we're going to remove scope. You can't get the same amount of scope for less money.
Yeah.
Because then you're giving yourself a discount, and it's kind of undermining your initial impetus. And then the last thing I think that they said here is, in the circle of people who know your past rates. Okay, yeah. So the same thing. Just
Yeah.
maintain, your integrity on your pricing. And if you lose a project over that, I can assure you the confidence that you had to have that conversation in the first place is going to bring you more projects. Don't I'm
That's
not going to promise that, but more often than not, standing up for yourself and valuing yourself does go a long way.
yeah. It's a good feeling when you actually like get the opportunity to do that too. And you're just like, yeah, like
Exactly.
that's right, you know? Yeah. That's That's a good
And
point.
that good friend of mine who just wrote
I
here
see.
in here, he wrote, I use 80% of the time raising rates means new clients. I completely agree.
Yeah. Take notes, everyone. Um, Lauren
But
is
do it
asking,
tactfully. Don't do it
yeah,
tactfully.
don't
Don't do it
just
like
like,
every month or
yeah,
something.
yeah. Be mindful about it.
Yes.
Lauren is asking, what do you think about hourly rates versus a project rate? What are your thoughts on that?
Project based. It depends on the
Mhm.
project, it depends on the scope of the work, it depends on the client. If it's a if it's going to be kind of a couple things here, couple things there, sometimes hourly makes the most sense. My personal preference is a project rate. It locks in your time, it locks in the commitment from the client. It also gives you a set way to invoice. So if the project is X amount, you can divide that up by X amount of months or X amount of weeks, depending on the project. You have a little
Mhm.
bit more control with project rates, whereas with hourly, you might have to set a cap. You don't know how many hours you're going to do a week. It's a little bit more difficult to plan. But typically, I would say if it's a very short-term project, and it seems a little bit random or scattered, usually hourly works well.
Mhm.
But again, this is very much project based on and what works for your client and you collectively.
If someone's like just starting out, would you recommend one, like, would it still be the same case where it's like project based, or would you prefer hourly?
I think it depends.
Yeah.
Typically, when you're starting out, my assumption is, and it was for me anyway, the projects were smaller in scale. So an hourly is often what feels more comfortable to a client because they feel like they have a little bit more of control.
Hmm.
But I don't think that one size fits all here. I think if you as a, as a budding designer feel more comfortable with hourly, then go that way. Do what feels most comfortable to you or suggest that to the client initially and take it from there and have that conversation. I don't think one is better than the other.
Hmm. Yeah. She's asking, do you find that residential projects prefer one over the other?
Yeah, residential in my experience usually either oof, usually they want a fixed number. They want to know what the commitment is on their end
Hmm.
financially. So if you say this scope of work is going to cost this much money, that typically makes residential clients feel a little bit more comfortable. But then again, scope almost always increases. And so make sure that you have a catch-all for the hours or the time that goes outside of scope so you're compensated for that additional time. I think that that's a misstep that I made. I know my colleagues in the industry made when they were, some of them were starting their own firm. You have to be able to capture all of your time. Again, I'm a broken record. You don't work for free.
So like if you were doing X number for project rate and then you went over, like you felt like you were spending a lot of time, would you then just charge like hourly? Is that what you're saying? Like do like I
Yes,
will do this for this project, but anything outside of the scope is like whatever hourly
you're
rate.
hourly rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's always very important to define the scope of work very clearly and ensure that your client also understands what that scope of work means.
Hmm.
And that, that goes back to my, my business 101, like, and how much value I put on that because it's so important to be very, very clear to your client and also for your client to really understand you in the beginning because there's nothing more awkward or unsavory, uncomfortable than having to be midway through a project and there's questions about scope of work of whose role it is to complete something. You
Hmm.
want to nip all of that in the bud, like in the very, very beginning.
Yeah. Just like have everything in there. Otherwise, yeah.
Yes.
I've run into this
Yes.
with, I mean, it's just the same with like any other job, right? Like if
Yeah.
there, nobody wants a surprise. So if it's not in the contract or your project scope, it could be, yeah.
And making
Um,
sure that they know what's not um, is important.
yeah. Thinking about clients and working with clients, how do you deal with difficult clients? Like we've all had a
Well, I
difficult,
try not to get them.
yeah.
Just kidding. Um,
Once in a while they'll creep in.
but we're all human, so like I feel like it's just it's so it's clients are relationships. And I think when you nurture your relationships, typically there's often clear communication channels.
Hmm.
So the difficult moments can, you know, be a little bit softer when they come up because, there's trust that's established and your client understands that like you're doing, you have the same common goal, you and general objectives, timeline, whatnot. So when there's a difficult, I wouldn't say difficult clients, I would say difficult moments with your clients.
Yeah.
Like people, like clients are client, they're paying you for a service. They are, within reason permitted to be somewhat demanding or permitted to, require updates and timelines. So I think starting out from the beginning of like how you're gonna roll. Like, am I gonna answer your text messages? Maybe not.
Hmm.
Am I gonna adhere to business hours? Probably. And making sure that you have those boundaries in place. And it kind of forces a relationship to go down a very mutual, respectful path together. So when something does come up, like, something that they wanted yesterday is now delayed by 3 months. That's not ideal. It's usually, not the designer's fault, but
Yeah.
you do have to have that difficult conversation. And how do you manage that? You explain. I think it's just all about effective communication.
Hmm.
Explain the situation, come to the problem with solutions prepared, and always ask for their feedback. Do you have a better idea? Do you like what is your perspective? And I think being able to have a conversation creates trust. It creates a good foundation for these difficult moments, and it kind of forces the benefit of the doubt, both for you and for your client. Needless to say, are there tricky moments where I'm like, what the hell do I do? Yes, of course. And what do I do in that moment? I'm very fortunate to have amazing mentors. If something's really that extreme, which I'm so grateful, it's often not that extreme, I can go to them and ask
Hmm.
advice. I think, phone a friend, like quite literally, is
Yeah.
always a good idea, especially people outside of the industry. I always find that when I go to my friends who are not in the industry, who are, also business owners, or not, their perspective on the situation at hand is always really soothing because they kind of destimulate the issue
Yeah.
and they help me understand it in just kind of like layman's terms, which
Right.
is helpful. Perspective, I think, is always helpful. I don't know
Yeah.
if that really answers your question, but
Yeah, I think it
I
does. I mean,
think
I think like
communication is key.
I was just about to say, I think the main thing that I took out of it is like, of course, difficult moments might come up, but most of the times communicating is always the thing that will solve for it. And even if you
Totally.
feel like you need to take it to somebody else, like a mentor or a friend, it's again communicating it and like talking it out to figure out the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is great advice. We have a question here about I'm just going to read it off here. So, how do you translate that work when you're using technical skills like CAD, SketchUp, drafting to residential clients in a way that they can understand?
Wait, sorry, say that again. Let me see. How do you
Yeah, it's at
translate
the bottom
that
here.
work? Um,
I guess just like maybe how do you communicate the more
how do you
technical?
communicate your technical skills?
Hmm.
Um, Well, typically, I mean, I guess it depends, again, client dependent. They might not care, they might just need to understand how you're going to show them a floor plan or a furniture plan. I don't think it's necessarily essential to explain to your client unless they ask which program or software you're using or if you're hand drafting. And I sometimes work doesn't necessarily require any of this when understanding project
Oh,
scope
when
and
I don't.
pricing. Oh, I think that that's just drafting time. That's you describe that as planning. That's the exercise to get from what this space is to how it's going to fit in scale, I think is part of the question here.
Mhm.
You don't have to justify this one too much. This is part of the process. This is furniture planning. This is placement. If they need to understand what AutoCAD and SketchUp or drafting or any sort of planning, floor planning is, um, I think you just have to kind of break down what the importance of a furniture plan or floor plan is if they question it. If they don't question it, just leave it in there. I think most people, especially given the age of Pinterest and just seeing floor plans and furniture plans all over the internet, I think most people have a general grasp of what this is. But if they come back to you for questions, that's just the drafting. That's just what I think how you get from what this space is to make sure your sofa is going to fit perfectly and all of those details. Sorry, my dog is making my nose itch. So right now. Okay, sorry.
All good.
Okay.
Great. We have a question. Any advice for someone that just graduated? Any tips? Are you trying to get into design or just general tips in
life tips?
And life tips, yeah.
Go to bed early. I guess if you're just graduated from design school and you want to become a designer, my advice would be the same as it would be when you're trying to break into the field. See where you want to work, what you want to do within the field. And I think the way to do that is to intern, to get part-time jobs. I mean, if you are trying to dive right in and be a designer, I mean, applying for entry-level design positions, I think is always an amazing place to start. You're going to learn so much. You're going to get your hands wet. Wet, dirty. Oh my God, I always say wet. I think after COVID, I'm like, I'm always washing my hands.
I'm just washing my hands.
Your hands dirty. Also, go to things like this. Get involved in the community, meet people, network, cold call, reach out to people. I think that, cold calls, cold emails, introductions, learning to say yes to things. And sometimes when you say yes to things, it doesn't end up always panning out to be the right fit for you or the right person for your life. But I do think that is a relationship that could always lead you to something else. I can't tell you how many wonderful people I have met that, just having casual conversation with and, with no intention of, creating a design or a professional relationship with them. And then down the road, they're like, so-and-so referred you to me. Like when I get a new client and I'm like, that was just from me saying yes to this, design event that I was like, I'd rather go home and watch Below Deck. And then I went and then, and
then you got a gig
create relationships. So say yes to things is my advice. Things that are interesting to you because you never know what's going to come out of it.
Yeah. Being open to different opportunities. Oh no, are you allergic to dogs?
No, I don't know what's going on. I'm okay.
Okay.
What else?
Yeah.
What else do we got?
Yeah, we have a few other questions. So we have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone has something that they have on their mind, please throw it in the chat and we'll jump into it. But we had a few other questions. Oh, here's one coming in now. What
Intimidated by competition? Yeah. Oh, I love this. Okay. Yeah. So this is something that I think is like rampant right now. It's actually something I was talking to Hila about yesterday. It's like imposter syndrome and the fear of competition within the design industry. And I think that the beauty of the design industry and creative industries in general is that they're like, everybody is just so different. And that's, I think, the nicest part about the creative industry is that there's just such an acceptance for things that aren't cookie cutter and things that don't look like each other, like different aesthetics, different styles, different perspectives, different approaches to how they execute design, different backgrounds, different career choices. I think that the path of becoming a designer is a very organic one. I don't think that it's not linear. It's like a big squiggly line with arrows in 10 different directions and, really trying to hone into yourself. That's why I think that's the first thing I said in this conversation is like, it's hard to, I can't say how do you not be intimidated by things because, there is so much out there. However, if you're true to yourself and you're true to your process and you're true to why you're in design and you really love it and you're here to do it for the reasons that make you, excited to work in it most days, I'm not going to say every day. All of that fear, all of that imposter feeling, it's still there. We're humans, these things come up, but it allows you to appreciate the organic process of how things will unfold for you. And I think celebrating the people around you and like really looking at like when you're intimidated by something, or you're like, why is this so good? Like, why do I love this so much? Or why am I so intrigued by this? Like, I think maybe that's like where you can kind of go into yourself and dig a little bit deeper and be like, why am I being so intimidated by this? Is there something in this that I don't know that I need to
Yeah.
learn more about? Is there something in this that, that rubs me the wrong way? And what is that? I think it's just like, having this internal conversation with yourself and trying to understand where that feeling is coming from. But, at the same time, sometimes you got to just put your blinders on and say, everybody has their own path. Everybody's going to do it their way. I'm going to do it my way, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it is always going to creep up once in a while, but like surrounding yourself with people who are supporting you and like, I don't know. I feel like honestly, so much of Spoke for me at the beginning was getting over imposter syndrome, like just being with a bunch of people who are trying to do the same thing as you. And we're all just like being open about it and having those conversations.
100%.
It's very real and it's like a normal thing to feel. So, yeah.
100%. Finding a sense of community, I think, within whatever your field
Hmm.
is important because it makes you remember that you're not alone, and like these feelings that come up are very normal for the most part, and it ebbs and flows. And even 5 years into having my own business, some of the feelings that I had since day one, still can exist. So don't be discouraged by that.
Yeah.
You're only human.
Joy says Spoke is the best hype team.
Agree, Joy. Yes, I
Yes,
completely
Joy.
agree.
Um, she also asked a question right before that. What are good ways to identify what part of your design process is your talent?
Oh, that is a
Fair.
very unique, good question. I think what you spend the most time on, what you procrastinate other things to do something like what are you sending off to like what are you procrastinating on to do what? Like, sorry, how am I saying this? Like, what I procrastinate a lot of specific things to do other things. So the things that you prioritize, I should say,
Hmm.
what you prioritize is probably what you're best at, because you enjoy it. But also, uh, I don't remember. I think it was Madeline who also said, and I loved this in our last session. You know, listen, like just keep your ears open. Like people will tell you what you're good at. Like people will give you specific praise on
Hmm.
what they love. Like if someone says, "Oh my gosh, you're so good at putting a tablescape together," or "Wow, you really find the best vintage like glassware." Like then take that a step further. Well, and inquire, what do you think about that? Why? And because for me, it's not always easy personally to see what I'm best at. And I think when I am complimented by something that I don't think I necessarily did the best job on, or I think, I am learning in a certain arena and I get a compliment in that space, it encourages me to keep going and dig a little bit deeper. But I also think that inherently people know what they're good at. Like,
Yeah.
and usually it's a lot of things that you spend your time on.
Yeah. Just like through practicing and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And somebody asked in here what my favorite Bravo TV show is.
Oh,
And
yes.
I don't watch a ton of TV actually. I'm always like 10 like hot TV shows behind, but when I do watch Bravo, it's usually Below Deck.
Nice. I
Yeah.
haven't watched that.
It is the best escapism. In COVID, it was like, I mean, I guess we're still kind of in COVID, but
Right. But like,
last
yeah.
year it was everything to me.
I feel like I got really into that show Alone, which is so stressful to watch. Have you seen it?
Why? Why?
I don't
I
know.
know what
We're
you're
we're
talking about.
we're
I have
talking
not seen it
mountains
because I
earlier
don't really
today.
watch these
Like we're
things.
just,
We're all over the place. I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
what else do we have? I know we had some other questions that came in. Do you want
Yeah.
to go through any of these quickly?
Yeah, so we have a few that are still yet to be covered. So, what is something that is not worth splurging on?
This will be an unpopular opinion.
What is it? Don't
Truffle.
know. Truffle? I agree.
Truffle.
I don't like it.
And the latest technology, also likely an unpopular opinion, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's necessary to get the personal opinion, the new iPhone the day it releases,
I
or
was just talking to Austin about this. He's
like
very with you on that one, and
I
I
just
have
don't.
the plan that I get it every year, and it's
So
so
does my
ridiculous.
fiance, and
So
I'm like,
ridiculous.
why do I need this right now? My phone is working perfectly, and they can't. And there's
I do it for the camera. I justify it for the camera, but
He does too.
I
And
agree.
I get that. But I don't think you need to spend your money on like there's always going to be something like it's not going anywhere. Why do we need to like shell out right away to make it happen this
It's a
minute? I feel like
yeah,
that's like an instant gratification thing in a way too.
yeah.
But truffle also. Like I'm like if I really want a truffle, I could just go buy the whole truffle instead of you giving me like the cost of one truffle for like 2 grams of truffle at a restaurant. Like, or
I
truffle
love that that was
oil
like
or truffle butter.
I love that
It's
it
just
was your
like,
first. Like I don't know that I would think of that first, but I 100% agree. I don't love truffle.
yeah.
What is
I mean,
truffle?
I
Someone
love truffle, but like, I don't think that's worth the splurge, personally.
yeah.
If someone was like, here, I'll give you all this truffle for free, I'd be like, that's wonderful. Thank you. I would not splurge on it.
Yeah, definitely not. Um, what are your favorite places to source when you're on a budget?
Um, Another great question. I don't think I have a specific list for that. What I have found, and I think my team has also found, is every vendor that we like, our kind of go-to vendors are always, for the most part, have a huge range. So I think it's just about finding the vendors that you like that have range and
Hmm.
going there because I don't like to say that any specific resource has like budget options because I think you can find it when you're looking for it and it can still be of the same quality because I think there's a very negative connotation around you know, low budget equals low quality, and I don't agree
Hmm.
with that. But I will say that it's the things that we have found on Etsy and also via all of the amazing artisans in Spoke, like
Hmm.
within like that network. I mean, it's incredible. And finding and having and starting conversations, it's like it takes more time, but asking someone, telling someone, I have this budget.
Hmm.
What can you do for this budget? That's, I think, always something that is overlooked. Everyone's looking for, everyone's going to like westdelm.com for,
I
things
know.
that are $50 or less. And there's way better options out there.
Yeah,
And
I
you just
feel
have to
like
dig for them. You have to sift. It takes time.
yeah. Yeah, but I think Etsy is like an awesome place. Also, literally, I keep saying it, but like I mean, you said it too with Spoke, like everyone finds the coolest, like I feel like I find the coolest glassware and
Yes.
accessories, like things that I literally I don't know where the people find them, but now they're on the feed and I'm pulling them
Yes.
and I'm using them. It's great.
Yes. I
Yeah.
said it last time, I think in one of these sessions, and I'll say it again. All the Instagram shops too.
Yeah.
Instagram shops all the way. Um, Nice Vintage Things and Good Things LA, my two faves. There's some great ones based in New York. I mean, Home Union's amazing, but they kind of like really blew up.
Oh my God.
So it's
Yeah.
hard to get on there now.
Yeah.
But Instagram shops for sure. And then you start that conversation in DMs. Pricing, what is there any room on this? Do you have anything else that's not posted here?
Hmm.
That's always good. I
Yeah.
think we have a couple more minutes. So, what
Yeah.
are our last ones?
We have 1 minute
Minute.
left. If anyone has any hot last minute questions, let me see. Okay. Is there a
I know you
current
sent me a
trend
couple.
that you love? And is there one that you hate?
I love how much like cool tones are coming back. Not everything is super warm right now. Like things
Hmm.
are going into like the chrome world and into the silvery lavender world, and things are things are kind of cooling down a little bit. And
Yeah.
not everywhere, but I don't always go that route, but I do aesthetically like really appreciate it. Um, and then a trend that I don't really love. Well, you know what? It's a trend that I just don't understand. And it's these
What is it?
pillows that look like basketballs. Like they are just like perfectly. Like they're
The
perfect
circular ones,
spheres.
yeah, this, yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't get this. But they're
They can be
on a
kind of
lot
cute.
right now.
Yeah, I don't have any, but
Oh, and sorry,
oh,
someone's
what
asking
were
the
the
shop
names of the
names. Good
shops?
Thanks LA, Nice Vintage Things, Home Union,
Oh,
and then
trying to
like
put them in
literally
my
everything on
hand.
Etsy. Yeah, those are the ones I mentioned just
Yeah.
now. But yes, these basketball sphere pillows, I don't understand them at all.
Well, I know I'm getting you for your birthday. Basketball spear pillow.
Don't do that. I'm gonna send it right back to you.
It's a trap. Oh yeah, and home union's there. Okay. Awesome. Well, we are at time now,
Yes.
but this was so much fun. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you
guys.
everybody that asked these questions. I
I
think
know
they're
these are
really,
really
really good
great.
ones. Yes.
If there are any other questions that we didn't cover, slide into our DMs. We might get to them in a next Q&A, but that was really awesome. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Daniela. Always good to see you.
Yeah, you
Okay,
too.
bye.
All right, bye everyone.